Yo guys, it's been so long since the last time I uploaded a video. I was very busy with work and didn't even have time to make a video. Now that I've got a time to spare, I would like to talk about one of the most controversial topics in One Piece, the Will of D. But before that, if you don't mind it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and let's all talk about anime. So, the Will of D is one of the mysteries in One Piece that even now still remain a mystery. The anime is already over 1,000 and the manga is already at its final saga, yet this D still remained unknown. What really is D? What is the Will of D? Let's have a recap on the events and scenes where this D was mentioned. First, back in Drum Island, right after the Straw Hats together with their new member Tony Chopper left the island, Koreha mentioned this D. She said in chapter 154, "Seems Reindeer has gone off with a very dangerous man. It seems the Will of D is still alive." This was the first ever mention of the Will of D. She said that and nothing more. That time, it was actually just something we neglected and never thought deeper on what Dr. Koreha mean with it. However, as the anime progressed, somehow this D is like a pipe or a waterway that creates the plot of the story, so definitely this is something really important. And from the way she said it, somehow the person who possesses the Will of D is dangerous. Why though? The next one is when Nico Robin, that time known as Miss All Sunday of Baruch Works, helped Luffy escape the quicksand. This was after Luffy's first defeat to Crocodile in Alabasta. Here in chapter 180, Robin asked, "Those of you who carry the name D, why do you fight?" Now guys, please keep in mind these important conversations I especially highlighted, okay? Because they hold deep meaning in our talk later. The third one is Robin talked with Ganfall after Skypiea incident that involved the Straw Hats. This scene was after Enel's defeat in Skypiea. After the Belfry was recovered, Ganfall talked to Robin and said that he found Luffy similar to Gol D. Roger. In chapter 301, the conversation wasn't expounded more, and this somehow left the readers hanging, especially when Robin said, perhaps the connection between them is another lost history. The next scene that mentioned the D is in chapter 392, when Robin talked about it with Jaguar D. SOOOO, who he himself doesn't know anything about it, except for the fact that this bloodline is running through his family's veins, the Giants. Then in chapter 507, the time when Robin asked Silver's Rayleigh what is the Will of D. Here, Rayleigh said that they knew what the true history is and advised Robin to take her time in learning it, and that they, the Rogers Pirates and the O'Harans, were too hasty and rushed in learning it. This somehow made me thought, what were the things not present and do not exist during Roger's time that made him unable to realize this Will of D? Rayleigh also told Robin this, "As you are now, you won't be able to do anything about it." What does it mean with this? Robin just wants to know what this Will of D is. What does it have to do with unable to do anything about it? What does power have to do with learning this Will of D? Why does one have to be powerful enough to learn this Will of D? I also want to emphasize, in chapter 552, Sengoku and Whitebeard noticed the existence of another D, that is Portgas D. Ace, who rejected the position of 7 Warriors of the Sea or Shichibukai, the Dogs of World Government. Next is Whitebeard's speech in chapter 576. In the flashback, Whitebeard and Roger talked about this D in Roger's name. Then before his death, Whitebeard told Marshal D. Teach that he is not who Roger is waiting for. He is not the D that carries Roger's will, and as long as that bloodline survives, their flames will never die. At the end of Whitebeard's lengthy speech, he said, "In the future, a man will appear, bearing the weight of history on his shoulders, to challenge the world," and even specifically told Sengoku that, "Your world government is afraid of the coming war that will engulf the world, and when that treasure is found, the world will be shaken to the core." Again, let me pick up the most important words in Whitebeard's lengthy speech. He told Teach, "You are not the one. As long as the bloodline survives, their flames will never die." And then, bearing the weight of centuries of history, and this coming war that the world government is afraid of. Then in chapter 591, Law mentioned about the D. This was when he and his crew left Amazon Lily after helping Luffy. He said, "The D will always bring a storm without fail." The same in chapter 729, when Law told Doflamingo that D will bring forth storm once more. And lastly, the scene I would like to mention that talked about will of D is in chapter 764. This was when Rocinante or Corazon talked to the child Lo. It was a very lengthy conversation, so I'll only pick those I believe are important. First, he said, back in his hometown, which is Marijoa, children or the young celestial dragons were scolded into behaving by threatening them with, if you don't behave, you'll be gobbled up by a D. Then, the D will always cause another storm, and that the Ds are the enemies of gods, the celestial dragons, and that the D's goal is destruction of the world. So there you go. Those are the important scenes that mention the D or will of D. So what is this D and the will of D and its relation to the Void Century? There are a lot of words that this D could stand for. In fact, so many already speculated what this D is. It could be devil, demon, demigod, destructor, demolisher, or dragon. Now, this is just my guess and speculation, okay? So please be easy on me with your comments. I think this D stands for dragon. Yeah, I know that it is hard to understand and take in, but let me explain my standing. It is true that if this D stands for devil, it would make everything a lot more easier, because that would mean these Ds are the owners of the devil fruits. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed it, but way back in the first volume, these fruits are not called devil fruits, but devil's fruits, meaning these are fruits owned by the devils. And over time, these devil's fruits has been changed, maybe because of translation errors or whatnot, but it has been changed to devil fruits, meaning fruits that contain the power of the devils. Either way, be it devil's fruit or devil fruits, the D, which stands for devils, will make things easier to take in. But I think this D stands for dragon. How can I say so? There's only one strong reason I can say, and that is the way how Rocinante and Law especially emphasized the D will always bring a storm or cause a storm. I know that bring or cause a storm may just be a figure of speech that means create a war or commotion. But what if Oda is trying to hint us of the outlook of the Ds, and that the D stands for dragon? I mean, dragons call for storms, and they create storms, right? Whatever fantasy book you read, you'll always encounter and know that dragons bring forth storms in their wakes. Also, Whitebeard said, as long as the bloodline survives, their flames will never die. Their flames. The dragon's flames. Dragons produce flames or fire, so yeah, it fits. Also, Rocinante mentioned that back in Marijoa, the young celestial dragons were scolded into behaving by threatening them with, if you don't behave, you'll be gobbled up by a D. See, you'll be gobbled up by a dragon. It fits. Gobbled up by a dragon, eaten by a dragon. Dragons call forth storms, dragons breathe flames, dragons gobble up weaker creatures. It fits. Really fits. Now, why would celestial dragons say to their children, if you don't behave, you'll be gobbled up by a dragon, if they are celestial dragons themselves? If they consider themselves as dragons, though not literally, but just a representation, why would they threaten children that they'll be eaten by another dragon? It is contradicting, really contradicting. So how about we put it this way? Centuries ago, more specifically during the Void Century, these Ds were the strongest race of all races. They could be literally dragons, which is most commonly the strongest race in all fantasies you can read, or they could be dragonoids, half human, half dragons, or they could be Lunarians, people with wings and fire at their back, or they could be descendants of dragons in human forms. Because of the strength of this dragon race, they were revered as gods, which is also the same scenario in any other anime you can watch. In fact, in Fairy Tail, I'll just mention this because I know some of you have watched Fairy Tail and that we can relate Fairy Tail to One Piece. In Fairy Tail, there exist a lot of different types of dragons. Dragons that can breathe fire, dragons that can heal, dragons that is hard as steel, dragons that is the body of shadow and light. So many different types of dragons. And that, in history, it was the dragons that dominate the Fairy Tail world. So what if Oda thought the same? What if back in time, dragons also dominate the One Piece world? The people of D in One Piece, the descendants of the original dragons, are like dragon slayers of Fairy Tail, the children of the ancient dragons. Can you see the link? And then due to their power, the rest of the races, especially the human race, feared them, and so these human race grouped together to defeat this race of dragons. And after this great war, these 20 kingdoms that grouped together, now called world government, replaced the authority of these dragons and called themselves celestial dragons. This is the reason why the celestial dragons are fearful of the people who bear the name D, because these people of D bear within the deepest of their consciousness the wrath of their ancestors, the dragons. That is the will of D, the will of dragons' revenge towards the celestial dragons, their usurper. And if we think that these people of D, the descendants, hate the celestial dragons, the usurpers, subconsciously because of the grudge of their ancestors, then that would explain why Monkey D. Garp does not want to become a Marine Admiral and be under the control of the world government. Why Monkey D. Dragon created the Revolutionary Army to directly oppose the world government. Why Monkey D. Luffy hates the world government subconsciously that led him to hitting a celestial dragon without hesitation back in Shabondi Archipelago. Why Trafalgar D. Waterloo hates Doflamingo so much, though it is because of Corazon's death. Why Jaguar D. Saul unhesitatingly removed himself from the Marines after learning of Olivia's circumstances. Why Portgas D. Ace declined the invitation to become a Shichibukai or world government dogs. And why Rox D. Sebek wanted to bring down the world government back in time and aspired to be king of the world. These people of D subconsciously hate the celestial dragons. Everything is all because of the will of D, the will of dragons to bring down the usurpers, the celestial dragons. And this was mentioned by Whitebeard before his death. Let me bring that up again. As long as the bloodline survives, their flames will never die. And in the future, someday a man will appear bearing the weight of centuries of history, that is the grudge of dragons, on his shoulder to challenge the world. The world government is afraid of the coming war that will engulf the world. So there you go guys. What if D really stands for dragons, the enemies of gods, celestial dragons? And the will of D is the grudge of dragons towards these so-called celestial dragons that overthrew them back in the Void Century. It is the will to take back what was once theirs, to exact their revenge, even if it cost them their lives. Let me repeat, even if it cost them their lives. This drive somehow imprinted to the future generations of Ds. The reason why these people of Ds do not fear death and even smiles at it. Roger smiled at his execution. Luffy smiled at his execution as well. Ace smiled upon his death. Rug smiled upon her death after giving birth to Ace. And Saul did a shit in the end. This assumption somehow makes things clearer. However, like a big however, you see, there is this light novel and manhwa called Second Life Franker. To those of you who have not read it yet, you better do because it is a very amazing, great work. It is a story about gods, demons, dragons, and giants fighting over power and such. Anyways, in Second Life Franker, there exist factions of gods, devils, dragons, and giants. And let me point out that the archenemy of gods are giants. The archenemy of dragons are devils. So if we correlate this to One Piece, it is also possible that D stands for devils, owners of devil fruits, and the enemies of celestial dragons. So there you go guys, that is all about this video, and let me end this video with Blackbeard is the only exception of all the things I pointed out about the people of D. Blackbeard is the only D that agreed to becoming a world government dog, Shichibukai. Blackbeard is the only coward. Blackbeard is the only D that fears death. Blackbeard is not the one, but he was the one who said,
海賊が夢を見る時代が終わるって？おい！なんだ人の夢は終わらねえ!
Why is that? What do you think? Comment down below and let's talk about them. See ya!